Wow, we got a banger of a show for you tonight, folks. Yeah, so let's get into it. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who are looking for a deeper conversation about the films we watch today. And yeah, we've got a banger of a show. We've got a big fat mailbag from the show last week about I'm Still Here, the Oscar-winning I'm Still Here. Of course, we're going to be diving into one of the also-rans tonight. That would be the film Conclave. But first, I think it's time to introduce my host with the most, my borscht bro, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I haven't done my voice exercises yet, but no, good. Finally done with award season, so that's out of the way. With the Oscars last night, of course.
Didn't I
have to
see
say,
on social media you had the Flow Cat as a guest?
yes, yeah. Well, I
Nice.
think it's
That's a pull.
a
That's a
flow body
get.
double. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our flow cat has a little white dot on its chest to differentiate, but they take care of that in post. Yeah, no, happy to see Flo. Like, I was like, yeah, when they won. I actually did a major fist bump. It's kind of a surprise, but also kind of nice for them. Great little movie. But
a movie I'd
Oscars,
love to talk about on
yeah.
the channel. We were trying to get it in there, but other stuff, we just couldn't quite get it before the big show. But
Yeah, it had come out for a few days at the local art house cinema in Winnipeg here, and yeah, like, I saw it at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, so it was kind of odd show times and that kind of thing. But the Oscars obviously overshadow everything. But I enjoy watching some of the other award shows, like the Independent Spirit Awards. Adie Bryant from SNL has hosted it the last few years, and she had a selection of her own awards that were rejected by the organizers. But she said, "I'm going to introduce them anyway." And one of I'll read the good ones out.
please.
Why didn't I think of that jealousy award? The extra making the most eye contact with the camera award. The no makeup award woman. The actor paraphrasing a script male, and my favorite was most screenplay. So that was I would like to see a short list of all of those.
Was there any other? I mean, of course, you know what, Brody, self-involved actor.
What?
I know, exactly, right? I mean, that's taken up a lot of the space, but I think really the no man's land or no one's land? No one's land.
Yeah, the winner for documentary.
Best I think that is actually an interesting story. I know you and I have not yet covered a documentary, but that might be a documentary look at if we were ever going to, play with the format a little. I think there's something interesting there, especially given is that showing a break within the American Jewish community between the Zionists and let's say the rest of the community, that movie wins in that town.
No other land is.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Of course, I think of this now as we are about to experience, as we are now entering into a new phase of experiencing the how should I put this? The end of the imperialism stick. We are recording this on the eve of the uh, Washington regime's imposition of tariffs as part of their economic war to force us to forcibly annex Canada. And so I'm thinking about Palestine. I'm thinking about Ukraine. I'm thinking about Mexico. And that's just a tease for next week's show. Jim, we do have a big show. We are going to be talking about Conclave tonight.
Mhm.
One of the also-rans, one of the Best Picture nominees. It, of course, did not win. It won to Honora, and I will put a link to our deep dive chat. We enjoyed that early in January.
Yes.
And we'll put a link to our deep dive. But of course, that's not what I'm talking about right now. I think we need to get into the mailbag.
The mailbag.
The mailbag, because we did, of course, last week, we covered I'm Still Here. We did a See It or Skip It and a deep dive. Links above, or
Sure.
pin them in a pinned comment, maybe. Jim, we had over 75 comments. A number of them, like, just really well thought out. It's like we stumbled upon this wonderful community of Brazilians happy to share their insight, to share their cultural insight, excited about our interest, but also willing to say, yeah, you got that wrong. I just feel, I feel really moved, actually, that
Yeah.
these folks were excited about what we're doing here on the show and excited to share their intimate firsthand knowledge.
Mhm.
And they recommended, boy, we had people. I was asking some to translate Brazilian Portuguese to
Yeah.
others who were doing that. There was other people saying, hey, can somebody help these gringos? Tell them I know the Brazilian title, but I don't know what the English title is.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting a little choked up. It's like
Yeah.
this little bit of internet is a cultural solidarity.
Mhm.
Jim, we're living in a time right now where I've said it before, and I'm going to repeat it. A very, very small group of oligarchs, of incredibly rich people across the world, are doing their damnedest on any side of a border to set us against ourselves, to say, don't be worried about me. You should be afraid of that person who's very much like you.
Yeah.
And by doing this, by watching these films, having these conversations, having these people chime in about their lived experience, we are getting, I feel like it's an act of solidarity. It's an act of understanding. It makes me feel a bit better about the world we're in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. It was heartening, and the quality of the comments. It wasn't just that they said, good job, I like what you do, which is always nice to hear, but they were very well, like, it took these people time to actually
Yes,
write
they
some of
committed
these.
time. Yeah.
Like, what I was saying to you earlier is I wouldn't feel comfortable just writing it on the comment section. I'd want to do it in Word first and then copy and paste it,
Well, some of
because they were
these, yeah.
that long. And that's not a complaint. That's absolutely, I mean, some of the most uh what's the word, I'm articulate comments that we've ever had in 5
Yes.
years of doing this, if not the most. And yeah, it's sort of, when we said we'd take a look at this, I think I expressed interest, you expressed interest. It's sort of like, I'm super glad we did in retrospect, because this is the kind of thing that you want with the channels that sort of trade off of ideas and getting a conversation started and stuff like that. And yeah, it was very rewarding. So, and it was a great movie. It was frankly one of my favorites of the year, that and The Substance. So when it won, with Flow, I was like, yes. And then I'm Still Here won, and I was, yes. It was yeah, it was good. It was really good. I was quite happy with the award show.
Like, look at that comment. Like, just a deep, background on this is one I wanted to highlight, Jim, from Manuel, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but Manuel had a great deep comment on the background of a number of the actors, kind of a dive into Brazilian pop culture, film, some of these people that were involved in this. How's
Yeah.
Central Station, which was recommended to us by other commenters, how these people, Walter Soyuz, I believe that is how they pronounce it in Brazil.
Okay.
Um, I looked that up. How these people are interrelated and part of the film scene, the film culture, the cinema culture in Brazil, and that was really cool. I do want to. There's a couple of questions I wanted to come to, or comments, and sort of comment on them, if that's cool with you, Jim.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, it is award season. Doris here talked about Demi Moore versus Fernanda Torres, about who should win the Oscar. All right. I'm you know what, Jim? For me, if you think of Fernanda Torres' performance and Demi Moore's performance, they're so different in style for such different movies.
Yeah.
I think this goes to the heart of why I really kind of dislike the horse race that is
Mhm.
the Oscars, because it's like, how do you choose which is better? They are
Yeah.
both outstanding performances. It's something I've said on the channel before, Jim, but about calibration.
Mhm.
That these films are really well calibrated to the material,
Mhm.
and I mean, so we can celebrate both, that they're both remarkable, that, as far as the Oscar goes, I mean, I gotta admit, I'm like, I'm not saying I don't care, but I don't think it's relevant. Both these performers, both these actors will be remembered well past their passing. They will
Mhm.
be immortalized in their work in a way that there are some Oscar winners where it's always gonna be "Oh, who was that person that won the best actor in?" Not to say that I think, was it Mickey, what the heck is her name? The woman who did win the best actor from Anora.
Mikey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, she's a young woman. She's done some remarkable work already.
Mhm.
She have a long life of even more amazing work. We don't know, though.
Sorry, I didn't
Time.
say her last name is Madison.
Thank
But,
you,
yeah.
Mikey Madison. Thank you, Jim. So Doris, yeah, I think uh, Fernanda Torres, although I'm sure she was disappointed not to win, same with Demi Moore, they've got a huge body of important work
Mhm.
that will that has so far stood the test of time. I do not see that changing anytime soon.
Mhm.
Another comment, Jim. Let's just keep scrolling through here.
Sure.
Um, and Lucas, now watch Central Station. It's on the list. Uh, okay, so somebody commented in Portuguese. Somebody else was kind enough to, oh my goodness, I've lost Jim. Oh well, I'm going to keep commenting until Jim comes back. Um, the according to Google Translate, it says the fascists on duty, the Brazilian far right hating on Walter Soyuz film. And yeah, we got that from a number of commenters about how the Brazilian right wing, is even denying that a dictatorship actually happened. Hey, Jim's back.
Yeah. Sorry.
You know, uh, that the Brazilian right wing is denying that there was even a dictatorship, that it was just I don't know, what would you call it, Jim? A council of elders just helping out, pitching in while the Democratic-elect government was away for
Yeah,
30 years.
just resting. Yeah.
You. So anyway, that was one of the comments we got. And another thing, and this is here, I'm gonna put that up on the screen. Maria said, got me here talking about racial subject. She's Brazilian. She liked the movie, but didn't like to see fewer black people in the movie too. True story, but that's a feeling, but, and I think I ham-handedly in our See It or Skip It referred to it as representation. And it's kind of, oh my goodness. I'm glad I left it in our See It or Skip It, Jim, but representation isn't quite the right word that I was going for, or the right word to use here. What I was really talking about is that Brazil's a big country
Yeah.
with black people, with indigenous people, that we're really seeing the experience of one upper middle class, one very affluent family. And so you don't see that, not as an active, why isn't there more representation here? More to say, we're getting a very narrow slice, as you would expect from the story of one family, really one woman's story. We're all, we only, our perspective is only so wide.
Yeah.
We certainly learned what she did later in her life, but by then we're well in the third act and it's almost like a credit reel.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Speaking of which, that also makes me think, and this is something else other commenters brought up, Jim. I know we didn't really answer the question definitively in the last episode, but the more I think about it, and especially after all the people commenting, it's like, yeah, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Of course, this film's a call to action. The mistake I made, Jim, was not acknowledging that this is a historical film. And as we've said on this, history films are not about the time it's set in, but our time. And
The
of
way it's
course,
filmed, yeah.
yeah, Solis, you got, was it Bolisano?
Yeah.
The ascendant right wing in globally, but definitely in Brazil, and his own attempt to pull a Trump and stay in office. The right wing, like you said, trying to boycott this film. This film was made in that context, and it is a call to action. It is something, while I'd still say it's a bourgeois revolutionary film, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is a call to action. It's saying you have this woman who could have been crushed by this, who decided to fight back, and yes, in a middle class way. So what? She fought back. She didn't just kind of go back home, go live with her mom, and everyone be quiet.
Yeah.
She became a lawyer. She turned herself to. She became a pain in the ass. The best kind of pain in the ass, a political pain in the ass.
Yes, professional, trained pain in the ass.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
you know what? For her to do that after they murdered her husband
Yeah.
is to say, is saying something is what is probably the biggest theme of this film. I don't know. You want to add to that part? We still got a ways to go here.
Well, we got another movie to talk about too, but yeah, no, it definitely, I'm just thinking about how big this is. Reading some of the comments is that, these lives are still going on, and there's maybe a question of calling the officers responsible back, to court and lifting the amnesty on it. And the son is, I read in one comment that he's actually being physically attacked by certain members of certain groups and that kind of thing. And yeah, it just
Douchebags are always douchebags.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And no matter what country you're in,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's still it's. Uh, I'm really glad that we got a sense of if you watch the movie, it's 2 hours and whatever,
Yeah.
but you get a sense of what's going on. It's a lot deeper, of course, and this is a family that I think lives in the minds quite heavily of
Yeah.
Brazilians, it seems. I mean, news stories are still coming out about them. And then, he's written the book and da da da
Yeah.
da. And they didn't even explain why he's in wheelchair, because presumably everybody in Brazil already knows, which is fine. We can always check these things out. But it's, yeah, a huge story. And I
Yeah.
sort of like, I wonder if there's an English translation. Maybe I
Well,
should.
I want to read this guy's book.
Yeah.
According to one of our commenters who first commented about the souffle, apparently that alone is worth the visit to
Yeah.
Brazil. So, Jim,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
do we need to go to some Brazilian film festival?
They keep talking about it. All they have is popcorn and M&Ms here.
He later on comments, and he's apparently the book does go into race, and from what he remembers of the book, one of the messages of the book is, if these horrors can happen to a white middle class family,
Yeah.
and let's put air quotes on white, a little, not air quotes, italicize it, right? Because they
Yeah.
Well, like everywhere, race in a colonial project,
Yeah.
whether it be Canada or Brazil, is always kind of a, okay, let's roll up our sleeves. We got a lot of work to do here. But
Mhm.
that I take his meaning, and I agree with it, is that if it can happen to a white middle class family, it can happen to anyone, and I suspect was happening to many. I mean, upwards of 20,000 people disappeared. But
Mhm.
this is the kind of heart of comments that we were getting. Good questions, challenging questions. Oh, there we go. That souffle is really great. Worth a visit to Brazil.
Yeah, I'm just here for the souffle.
Yeah. Ooh, Lost Whispers. Loves the format, loves the audio. Thank you very much. I
Mhm.
that didn't really need to be highlighted, but I wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
Another commenter here, Architera, I don't know why I'm pronouncing this, because I know I'm only effing it up, but they said people couldn't react crying in those times for security reasons,
Mhm.
you know? And I would even go further, Jim. It makes me think of having to be quiet, but also making the film that quiet gives you an idea of that isolation.
Mhm.
And I know you and I talked about it. I don't think she was totally cut off from everybody, but you're gonna feel it. And the
Yeah.
film gives you that feeling. And that being quiet and not crying and everything is almost like I have to put up a brave face, but I also don't want to let the bastards know. But I also, like I said, say crying, and then why is they're crying? And maybe we need to shut them up further, you know? Another
Yeah.
thing we found out, of course, through these wonderful comments, okay, wonderful, maybe a little bit of an air quote on the wonderful here, is, how yeah, Eliana was not just tortured, but sexually assaulted, raped.
Mhm.
Um And it's like, and even further on, some commenters saying, well, we'll never really know about Eunice, but, and you and I were talking about it the other night, and I'm like, I don't know why, honestly, Jim, I don't know why I didn't give this consideration. Maybe I just didn't want to believe it, or I didn't want to think it. You become attached to these characters, right?
Mhm.
Especially in such a well-drawn film, such a well-told story, that I don't want them to suffer any more than I'm already seeing them suffer. But, you think about Eunice, and I'm wondering if Soyuz, that's exactly why he had that scene, because it's a long piece, that when
Yeah.
she does return home, what is she first thing she does? She showers. She checks on her kid, kids, and then she showers, and
Mhm.
it's a long like, it's one of those ones where it's like, what do we hear about victims of sexual assault? It's almost like, "I wanna be clean." They need to be
Yeah.
clean,
Mhm.
and, try and get that off of them, and so I'm wondering if it's I'm like, I now can only interpret it as an allusion to, at least in Soluse's mind, you know, uh, she was sexually assaulted as well. Because I mean, I've said it about
Mhm.
war, and a dictatorship is a war on its own people. It's the military just saying, "Well, you're an enemy,"
Mhm.
the people we come from, and sexual assault is a part of that. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Um, but I will say again, thanks to our commenters here who would bring that up, it's an important part of the history. Um, Anna Claudia, talks about the love letter component and about, Bolsonaro and that idea of here it is. This is the comment. Marcelo, the writer, was attacked during a carnival party in Sao
Yeah.
Paulo. A man in a wheelchair. Because, why are they all such f***ing just cowards?
Yeah. Oh,
You
absolutely.
know?
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks very much for that, Anna. Here is Valeria. Valeria brings up a comment. She's talking about when we were talking about the line it sticks to, and
Mhm.
how we were impressed with the film. And she says, and it's a great insight. This line is Eunice. Like, there's one or two times when will sometimes we'll switch to the kids conversations, but
Yep.
it's very brief. That line is Eunice, it sticks to Eunice, and that's just a strength of it. Then, of
Mhm.
course, she says, "We're wonderful," and that's always good. Um,
Most importantly, I'm just kidding.
I do. I have a couple more, 3 more, and then I swear to God, we'll get to the real the show we're doing this show for. We only started half an hour late. Um Lou here talks about the histrionic less. Like we talked about that. That wasn't big
Yeah.
histrionics. Wasn't a big movie of the week, lifetime movie of the week kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the quote, I think this is just worth reading out. The histrionics say this is a movie and it needs the over the top dramatics as a bridge to move you through the screen that separates us and creates a distance. Whereas I'm Still Here is not going that way. It's quiet that it has the realistic hit. Now
Mhm.
that's me paraphrasing it, but you could, folks, just go. I will pin links to these videos. Of course, we love the watch time, love the likes, love all that stuff. But go check it out if you haven't already, just for the feedback from these folks who knew far more about these folks' stories long before Jim and I saw the movie.
Mhm.
Eunice was in jail for 12 days. Now, here's Lucas talks about nostalgia. And it kind of gave me another way of looking at Soyuz's use of the Super 8 earlier. And we talked about it was warm and very Super 8
Mhm.
early, and then it gets colder and clearer, like it's just sharper. The images
Yeah.
are sharper later on. There's no grain or less grain. And it kind of dawned on me, Jim. I thought of this as Solis is playing with us there. It brings the warm nostalgia brings us in,
Mhm.
gives us a feeling of, "Oh, I remember," and, "Oh," and, "Ah," and "Ari," and then all of a sudden this horrible stuff happens in this nostalgic gauze, and it has a harder hit because 'cause we're
Yeah.
not used to seeing that with that filter on it. And unlike other You might think, "Oh, it would take the edge away." I don't think it does. It actually kinda it's almost like a cinematic way of saying, "What are you so nostalgic about? Remember? Remember what actually happened then?"
Mhm.
And I think it actually adds to the great
Mhm.
storytelling that we
Yeah.
got.
Little bit of dissonance there.
Yeah.
I was gonna, but I'd get too much into the weeds if I checked on Instagram. But I think there's like a Rio filter, and I was thinking that as the movie moves from Rio to Sao Paulo,
Yeah.
two cities which I know not lots about, but it does change. Like the color palette changes, and the feeling changes, and the architecture changes, and their living
Oh,
arrangement changes, and everything changes. And
just
yeah,
just like if we were, Winnipeg to Vancouver.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I think that's one of those things that the Mercator projection kinda squeezes what is an incredibly large country,
Yeah.
an incredibly populous country, with let's say, an indigenous population, let's say, just so much bigger, like, it just again, the colonialism in Brazil is not like the colonialism in Canada
Mhm.
or the United States, and I think, we see that we see a hint of that here. Here's another comment, Jim, that I wanted to highlight. Apparently, and this was brought up multiple times, apparently Soyuz, for all his billionaire status, I mean, which also makes you think, "Oh, the Paivas were more than upper middle class." But Soyuz, he played with their kids. He was,
Yeah.
maybe not literally one of the kids that we saw playing in the house and everything, but he was one of those kids,
Yeah.
in Rio de Janeiro,
Mhm.
which I thought was, and then here's where somebody's suggesting a movie to us, and then literally, can one of our friends help our friend gringos, our foreign friends understand them or tell them about the movie I'm trying to tell them about. And I did work it out with him. It's
Mhm.
4 days in September. It's about the kidnapping of the US ambassador, which was one of the triggering events
Yeah.
of the, Paiva's ordeal, starring Alan Arkin, bizarrely
Yeah.
enough, and Fernando Torres.
Oh, yeah.
A younger Fernando Torres.
Of
Fernando
course, yeah.
Torres was like in '99 or something, but
Mhm.
yeah, revolutionary perspective. Anyway, I just think it's super cool that these commenters are giving us context, you know?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, it was great
Yeah.
reading,
Now,
kicking back and reading.
I'm gonna on the last comment, I started it with a big, long, detailed backgrounder. Quant Universe gives us another amazing Brazilian American, grew up in Brazil, living in the US for the last 20 years. So he's got that great cultural overlap.
Mhm.
But he is giving us this huge background right here, just kind of genius, just a great analysis of the film, but also a great, uh, historical background and cultural background. And so I strongly recommend you take a look at this. It's just a really great, use pause to read it. It's just a fantastic background. Plus, he was also kind enough to translate a couple of other comments other people made. So
Mm.
thanks, man. And who's this
Yeah.
Jim guy? I suppose we could like him. Alexandra here,
Real time.
Alexandra, talking about Eunice's, yeah, this is where I'm like, I gotta read this book. Central Hub, also giving us some of that, especially that Central Hub discussing class, but also the Brazilian take on indigeneity and race, so well worth, checking out. Yeah, it's, you know yeah, race in Brazil is a a a a I don't want to say complicated because then I sound like some yuts going, "Oh, it's really complicated in Palestine." No, it isn't. It's the answer is simple. It's just hard and expensive. But anyway, folks, I just thank you all who commented. Thank you all so much. And Jim, thank everyone out there who might be watching. Uh, Thanks for the patience. Of course, later on I'll put chapter markers. But yeah, this is just a great experience. I'm so glad, Jim, we watched the movie.
Yeah.
I am so glad we picked this film. We captured a bit of the magic. I think the bit of the magic of, the internet, a positive, why YouTube, I think, for all its terribleness at times, is the S tier. I agree with Marcus Brownlee. It is the S tier of social media platforms. So yeah.
Yes.
On that note, Jim.
Obrigado, folks.
I don't know what that means. So why don't you tell us all?
It's just thank you in Portuguese, I believe.
Well, yes. Second to that. I second that, sir. All right. Let's talk about the movie we actually want to talk
90
about.
90 seconds left.
Yeah, that's right, folks. We did come here specifically to talk about Conclave. Here's the Jim, here's the log line. When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a web of conspiracies. Of conspiracies, Jim. A web of conspiracies.
Many.
And intrigue. Conspiracies and intrigue, Jim. That could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. And that isn't me just being a smartass. That's the actual log line from IMDb. Of course, that really is, it is a great log line, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, now that I've had a few days thinking about it, and I'll put a link up here, folks. Did a couple of hours ago publish our See It or Skip It, our spoiler-free See It or Skip It. But for me, my opinion remains. It's actually even, yeah, I think you mentioned about how it's not as smart as it looks. And I'm kind of leaning into it. It's still got a lot worthy of discussion here, but that I got to admit, in a 5-10 years, I don't think anyone's going to remember this. Before we get into the spoiler zone, what any of your initial thoughts?
Well, I rewatched. I watched it rather late, and I was kind of not super fresh on Friday night because it was like the only chance I had to watch it before the festivities of the weekend. And then we were gonna go see Captain America and that kind of thing. So the next night, so I rewatched part of it, the first part, tonight, and you know what? I came away sort of appreciating it a bit more. It didn't alter my my opinion of its sort of internal chemistry, but I thought it was a lot more there's little sort of echoes of things, and the cinematography, beautiful shots. There's this one held shot.
Okay, wait, I'm gonna stop you there.
Just it was I thought it was a lot more carefully written than I'd initially thought it was.
Okay.
And it
all right. On that note, then let's jump into the spoiler zone. Jim, I am like, if I had more time, I would have had this remarkable slideshow about the look of the film. I'd said it in a lot more critical a way about another film we covered on the show. This one, this one got a glow up. This is what you can do with, I mean, a rather entertaining story, nothing that deep. Robert Harris isn't known for, this isn't he doesn't do John le Carre,
Mhm.
you know, but in the hands of the right director, the right filmmaking team, you can kind of go, wow, this is fancy. I I mean, I could see filmmakers looking at it for its craft,
Mhm.
and yeah, some of the performances are remarkable, but I expect that at this level. It's a ton of money, star-studded cast. I even put it in our theater skip, and I did a frame grab of the actual still, Jim, of Isabella Rossellini
Mhm.
given a side eye, and it's like, damn, that is even better than I remembered it.
Mhm.
So there are moments here, I'm with you, that my estimation did improve, but in general, as far as a movie, I'm not sure we're gonna remember it in 10 years. What do you what
You know,
what I cut you off before, but let's get back to what you were saying.
there's a few
Now that you
Pope.
can spoil it up all you want.
Sure. There's a few popey movies out there. Wasn't there the two popes? A few seriously, like a couple of years
Yeah.
ago, SCTV at one point did the man who would be king of the popes, and I with Richard Burton. Who was it now? There's like Richard Harris and
Of
Peter
course.
O'Toole, all with alternate spellings, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, there's been several things. Jude Law played a pope. There was the Borgias, I think, which had to do with power, power plays in Vatican City and the electing of popes. Anyway, so there's been a lot of pope stuff lately. I think this one will stand out. I think it's got a beauty to it. And will we? A lot of the Academy nominated Best Pictures didn't actually make a lot of money in the first place. I mean, so did a lot of people see it? Is that enough for people to remember it? And is it going to be like the Shawshank Redemption in a few years, where you keep on bumping into it in cable and like, this is a good movie? Will we remember it? I mean, there's some pretty solid performances. Ray Fiennes really anchors it well. I think it's one of his. It's interesting because he was like the good-looking, almost like a rock starry guy 30 years ago,
Right?
and now he's sort of like a little turtly guy with the glasses at the end of his nose, and yeah, he really. I mean, the whole thing is centered on the weight of his spirit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's quite a lot of commitment in here. I mean, I think I'll remember it. I don't know about the masses in general, but. I think it's one of the better, just to put it in a sense, I think it's one of the better movies about the church.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm not sure if it's one of the better movies about the church,
Or the workings of the
but
church.
I would say I agree with you 100%. Definitely at the top of the pile. Or if it's second only to the King of the Popes. But yeah, you know what? If anyone does a list of movies about popes, yeah, you're absolutely right. This has got to be up there. What did you think? I do have other questions.
Mm-hmm.
I came up with others, Jim. Here's a well, first of all, here's a fun fact. Did you know, my friend, that turtles, including sea turtles, not all turtles, but turtles, sea turtles, are temperature dependent on sex determination. And as global warming continues apace, the sea is churning out more female turtles. Apropos of nothing,
Nope.
no thematic element here. uh, but that does make me think. One of the main themes
Yeah.
is really about secrets, and there's secrets to protect, secrets to exploit.
Hmm.
Um, turtles in their shell, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Did the ending, which is super symbolic, I think,
Yeah.
did the ending work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it did actually. And well, in terms of the big twist at the end, a lot of people are sort of criticizing that and saying that it's sort of using it. Basically, it turns out that the one that's elected pope, we're already in the spoiler zone. That the mystery pope that's fairly new on the scene, a new cardinal on the scene, who sort of literally came out of nowhere.
Cardinal
Um,
Vincent
it-
Benitez,
yes,
played
and
by Carl Dees.
he turns out that he's had appendicitis, and when they went to operate on him, they discovered female organs in. So it's more a sort of a, would you classify that as a hermaphrodite kind of uh, situation? I want to be precise about
I
my language here.
Yeah, I think I think there's an actual here. This is what this is. But
Yes.
he had ovaries and a
Mm,
uterus, even though externally and as he was raised is externally a man.
yes. Yeah. So that people said they were sort of using that as a plot twist, and I've talked to people that have seen it in my own life, but I was thinking that of all the popes have, how to put this, all the popes have a reason for them not to be pope. You're right, and most of them have to do with sin, and his is the only one that doesn't have to do with sin. He was born that way, and the name that he chooses is Innocenti, which I think is it sort of causes the Ray Fiennes character to smile. And yeah, I thought that was really well handled, because there is a differentiation. There's
Until he
nothing.
finds out his secret, and then he struggles again.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
um.
But
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was just going to say that that's kind of an interesting. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's other things you could come up with, but Lithgow's character, the Canadian Joseph Tremblay, I guess, has issues with simony.
Not
So I'm learning.
not
I'm learning words
Jean
here.
Tremblay.
No,
Joe.
Joseph.
Sure.
And the other one, Adeyemi, lust. There's elements of greed here. There's elements of power and
Lust.
pride. I mean, a lot of these sins, right? Literal sins. Ray Fiennes himself talks about the sin of certainty, which is a super interesting concept, I think, is that certainty versus doubt, which sort of is a nice line throughout the whole movie. But so this is, the one thing that the Mexican Pope can't, has no control over. It would be enough for, say, if Tedesco found out, that guy would be out of there. But I thought it was kind of a really interesting, for that sake. I don't think it was unearned. I think it was kind of an interesting way to go about it anyway, from a plot point of view.
That's a great point. Like, I certainly, when we're watching it, at no time when we, well, both watch it in the comfort of our own homes. When I was watching it, I didn't feel like,
yeah.
But when I thought about it, I'm like, there's a bit of the, like I said it in our See It or Skip It, and I feel more strongly now about it. There's a lot of thematic money on the table. And even this ending, I find is a bit of a bit of a cop out. And I don't there's a few things I think that can be challenged here. Um, One, in a movie all about secrets and then secrets being found out, that, oh, but this one we're going to keep because we've got to protect the turtle. It'll be run over by the outside world. It's like, yeah, you know what? How often has the Roman Catholic Church used that we got to protect, you know,
Oh
we're
yeah.
protecting people. Are you? Are you really? You know, maybe a little transparency. um, Another level that the ending, as I think about it more, I kind of go, there's always this sort of, it's almost trying to make physical the idea that, you know, if they can find the woman within, they won't be the bastards that they all are. Two women, two children,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, we'll just make that physical, make it literal, that this is what the church needs to move into the future. And it's like, I think you got bigger problems that's not going to solve.
Mhm.
Um, and that's again, like it didn't, I can't say it didn't feel right. Like from a story perspective, from a storytelling perspective, it's like, oh, that's pretty good. All these others, you're absolutely right. They're not just sins, they're like cardinal, or not cardinal, deadly sins,
Mhm.
of pride and lust, you know, uh, greed.
Mhm.
I think that's really Tremblay's sin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is greed, is avarice, of wanting, you
Mhm.
know, although and Bellini's is pride. Even, I wonder, Bellini does accuse Rafe, sorry, uh, Cardinal Lawrence
Lawrence. Yeah.
Thomas, of, you know, trying to undermine him. They're all the quote liberals, close quote, of the College of Cardinals.
Yeah.
He really does have ambitions. And here in the movie, and I think it's great storytelling, it's like, well, maybe he does. He certainly had an answer about what his Pope name would be,
Mhm.
you know? Um, which leads me to another question. Like, I mean, I've given you my answer, but what did you think about Lawrence? Did he always have ambitions? Maybe deep down, maybe like he wanted to be pastoral? That would,
Yeah.
like what one of the setups is that he had earlier on, he had wanted to leave his role as the dean of the Cardinals, this managerial post,
Mhm.
to join an order and be out in the world, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and the previous pope denied him that, refused him that transfer.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, did he always, because maybe he thought, it's like, I'll never be pope if I don't have some time out in the field.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah, keep on thinking SCTV. I want to be Pope. I also want to be king. I would be the man who was king of the popes. Yeah, but I think that was Dave Thomas's Richard Harris. Yeah, there's obviously an internal struggle going on within it. Like he's got doubt. He brings that up to Stanley Tucci's Bellini character. He says, "Yeah, I've got doubt," and he goes, "Oh, the father, the Pope that just died, who they don't name, I don't think."
No, they don't.
I was looking for it. The Pope who just died, he also had problems, and he had doubts, and Ray Fiennes was referring to doubts with God, and or I think. yeah, and then Stanley Tucci said no, it was with the church itself or something to that effect. So his doubts go quite deep. But at the same time, there's obviously an internal struggle. There's the little warning said, warning, smoking, comma, violence. And I think the violence was referring to the car bomb, which goes off at at the end of the second act, I guess.
The bombs
Um,
we
that
the
we
bombs we never see.
just sort of catch some dust from. But up until he's having troubles, like he rips off his hat at one. So the most violence is him. He's trying to open a bag of toiletries and it won't open. And he just sort of rips it apart. And then at one point he takes off his sort of cap, his Cardinals cap. It's probably got a name, which I don't know. And he just takes it off. And there's another part where Tedesco grabs him and he just goes, he just sort of let go of me. It's like a little Bruce Lee move. So, I mean, there's these little, and then he says a couple of things. He just says, that's not my intent. And he says, almost shouts it out. So these are like little bits of negative energy that he's giving. There's something troubling him. There's something in him. And maybe it's that dissonance between maybe he does, or maybe he did want at some point in the past.
I'm wondering if are you overthinking it, because he's quite honest with he's not happy. He's just not a happy man.
No,
he's in a role he doesn't want to be in a time of stress, and this man who's this unnamed pope, who a number of them are quite emotional about his passing.
Yeah,
so any of those things, I don't know if it's. I was more just about the ambition.
Yeah.
Or was the ambition awakened in him over the course of the movie as Bellini's star falls?
Well, and the votes go up and down. They're 5, then they're 11, then they're 9, then they're 13 for Lawrence or whatever the numbers were. There's quite a few votes. I mean, it could be a couple things. I don't think he wants to be dean at this particular time. I don't think he wanted to be
he said
charge
that,
of the conclave.
But he just straight up said it. Go ahead.
This interested me, and I was going to pose this to you to see what you thought. The very last shot of the movie, and it sort of ends a tiny bit abruptly, not too bad. He's back in his little chambers there.
Yeah.
And he looks out the window and he hears a little commotion, and there's just 3 nuns that are sort of walking out. And he just looks out the window, and you can sort of feel the weight come off him, like he smiles.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder, it probably means a couple different things, but I just thought that there was a sense of peace there. What did you think about this?
No, I think at the end, he's like, it's all happened as it should.
Yeah.
The right person is in charge of the operation. You can tell he's like, holy crap. But he makes his call. The real ending of the movie, the rest is denouement.
Yeah.
The real ending of the movie is when he takes care of the turtle. Like that's when he picks up the turtle, just as the old Pope, and they're always trying to herd them because they're all going to get run over in the real world.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's probably the most interesting metaphor of the whole film for me.
Yeah.
Was that idea of these turtles always getting away. And, because they don't want to be in a pond. But then here's this man who's now the Pope, and given his God-made nature, in the context of the film and in the context of any, faithful person watching the film, that last moment is where he's like, I've got to make a call. Is this the one secret I am not going to expose? And he doesn't. And then later, as he gets to take off those robes of duty. He's, even if he stays dean afterwards, he's, yeah, the chances of him having to deal with another one of these conclaves is
No,
nil to
very
zip.
low.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and I think he is happy. Yeah, and I like that end. You know, it's once you're done, go.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. You
Well,
know?
yeah, and it's just that he's
You
looking
know,
out the
we
window,
don't need
looks
an
at
Adrian Brody, 5-minute ramble where he literally goes, "Who else do I need to thank? This
yeah.
isn't my first rodeo." You, buddy. Like, right there. It should be, "I've thanked everyone I need to thank. All the others I'll thank personally. Thank you for this honor. I gotta go." What a
Mhm,
dick. And this movie ends, it's like, what else is there to say? It
mhm.
ends on a moment, an emotional moment. I thought that part of the ending, that denouement is fine for me. Like I
Yeah, oh,
said, I
yeah.
got more thematic problems with the ending, with even the, this is what will solve the church's problems. It's like, and it doesn't get to, because he's certainly a representative of a, hey, maybe we should be serving the poor, you know?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
about all these victims of violence? What about all these victims of trauma? You know, and it's alluded to, but they spend too much time with the venal sins of these, or the not just venal, the deadly sins of these cardinals, and how they're so quick to forgive each other.
Well, and they're such assholes. Like when they introduced Benitez for the first time, he was elected and he was made cardinal in
Appointed
secret.
inside, yeah,
None of us have met him here. Here, he's come from a very long way away, and here he is. And there's silence, and then Ray Fiennes goes, "Yeah,
because
let's,"
the
and
stakes are
very,
high.
very tentative clapping. He's
Yeah,
not part of the club yet, according to
yeah,
them. And I just thought, what a bunch of dicks, like just like thoroughly dickish.
yeah,
They can't even bring themselves, and Tedesco doesn't. He just sits on his hands.
yeah.
But yeah, they just nope. Oh, whatever. Who's
Yeah.
this guy to me? And yeah, that was sort of uh, an interesting moment. Anyway.
Yeah. Jim, I think it's time. I think it's time, Mr. Chaboyko, for the, because I've got more to say. I know that shocks you. You probably do as well. But
So,
I know I do. But I think we should move into the social nutrition
oh
checklist.
yes,
Get into a bit more of the meaning of this film, the politic of it. Um, why I think it's not as smart as it looks, notwithstanding its amazing storytelling craft on display. Would it receive a reframe stamp, domestic or international? No, it would not. Was it union made? Yes, it was. At least the parts of it that were made in the United States. Um, would it pass the Bechdel test? Good Lord, no.
no,
And just almost offensively no,
yeah.
you know? Um, and then last, but certainly not least, does it have a working class perspective?
Where are all my rings?
Jim, this is where I'm gonna start to crap on this film kind of hard, or maybe not on the film, but on the meaning of it. You know what? It was hilarious. It is the perfect example of, I think, the fundamental hypocrisy of, not of Christians, not of Christianity, not of the small C church, which I have some sympathy for, even though I'm an atheist. Um, have you ever seen when they're in their little cells in the conclave, they're very austere, but rich, rich. It's marble walls. Everything's nice wood. Everything is just mwah. Like now there's a monk's cell I could while out my days.
Yeah,
All, they're dressed by others, they're fed by women. Everything is just the absolute best as they perform poverty.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the Benitez character is that breath of fresh air, a man who's appointed in secret because, you know, appointing him uh, as part of a mission to Afghanis in Kabul,
Mhm.
in Iraq, apparently before that. Yeah, that's a target on your
And
back,
The Congo
or
too,
the
I think. Just all
Congo.
these.
Yes,
No, no,
yes.
it wasn't. No, you're right,
Yeah.
because it was Congo, then Baghdad,
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
Kabul.
this is a guy but it's interesting, he does bring in that point of view, that little bit of, "Hey, there's some poor people out here that I have met in my travels."
Mhm.
A great confrontational moment, really, where it hooks into the 3rd act, where he's the only one to really stare down the Tedesco character.
Mhm.
Have you seen war? Have you been in a war?
Mhm.
Great moment from a storytelling perspective. And this is where, Jim, I, you know what? We're North Americans, English speaking North Americans. I think that's important to highlight that. Our understanding of the Catholic Church is bound by that experience. But I don't know about you. I remember in the 80s during the Salvadoran Civil War, you know, the assassination of this poor bugger, Archbishop Romero, and how the church kind of sort of, hey, we're got a problem with that, but well, they're fighting the communists, because that was John Paul II's
Mm.
hobby horse. But like in El Salvador, we were getting stories on the nightly news of CIA-backed death squads raping and murdering nuns, murdering priests in multiple massacres. It's like these just couldn't stop themselves. And
Mhm.
it's interesting in the same context, because Operation Condor went on for decades, and how the CIA, in cooperation with the local rich and powerful, the local oligarchs, the local fascists, it's like we gotta put these people down, because that Catholic Church, or those Catholic Jesuits, you know, even the current pope has a bit of a past of, did he do as much as he could have to get a couple of Jesuits who had been disappeared for a while? He may have probably saved their life, but could he have done more? You know,
Yeah.
um, that the Roman Catholic Church was corrupted, but there's these activist priests and activist nuns, Americans, like from all over the world, following a liberation theology interpretation of the gospel in real solidarity with the poor. And this film, because it has such a English speaking and, let's say, affluent Western country perspective, it's gender is another thing, but they're not talking about the Magdalene. They talk about it,
Uh,
but still only from a male perspective.
yeah.
We barely hear from Isabella Rossellini's character. We have a beautiful shot. Every shot she was in was amazing. But Jim, you have a past with this woman.
I
I
do.
know. I can only imagine the real life experience is just fundamentally different. But there she is. There's this, and it says something, but barely. It barely lets these women speak,
Yeah.
you know, and like these are that thematic stuff that they just leave on the table. And this is where it's like, I have a lot more sympathy with that person. Is this is smart. This is not as smart as it looks. This is not as smart as the impression it gives you. It is a very good movie, but it ain't great. You know?
Mhm.
I don't know. I what please, Jim, react to that.
Well, it almost, in terms of the cast, it's funny because it's almost, and you're dealing with a largely male institution anyway, but it's almost like those old war movies where there's like a bridge too far or something, which is just like 47, fairly well-known male actors, and Olivia de Havilland as the nurse, or something like that. And so there's like literally two women, I think, with speaking lines.
Yeah.
One of which is Isabella, and the other one is the nun that Cardinal Adeyemi had a past with,
She
or
is I mean, Sister Shinumi.
Tanumi, yes.
Yeah.
And there's some women who you hear chatting sort of off screen or not,
Yeah.
like the very final shot. But yeah, no, it reminded me of those old war movies almost in that sense.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, you're dealing with I mean, you're kind of a little bit hamstrung by the actual institution you're looking at. But at the same
excuse
time,
me.
they I think they mentioned they had a they have one of those sort of staircase conversations.
When they're saying they felt like they're in a back room, it's like,
Yeah.
you're the ultimate back room.
And well, and
The
they say,
absolute ultimate back room.
there's one
Everything's secret.
reference
You burn the ballots.
there's one reference to horrible sexual
Yeah.
assaults, or
Yeah,
I can't remember what the
including
actual.
children. You do hear
Yeah,
them say once,
one time, yeah, yeah. and
the
and and
kids.
yeah, and there's a couple other things that they list off
Yeah.
as well, but faults of the church or things that they're going to have to overcome, or what have you.
Mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made, yes. Yeah, on every continent, in every country.
And when
You know
we
what
made a
cures you know
mistake,
what cures that?
we
Transferring. Yes, that'll.
well, and that is, I think that's the like this is not to say that this is I'm not saying that these filmmakers are evil or something.
No, no.
They are, but they are not. It's it's like there is an opportunity here. You could have the same story, but have more thematic heft.
Yeah.
You know, give us something where they're not just struggling with their ambition, these very individual things. Give them their like even Tedesco's almost like at the end when he has his explosion about the Muslims and another holy war, it's like, as he twirls his mustache,
Yeah.
it's like, it's why aren't you guys really struggling with the real issues you're facing? The fact that we're at a time that I wanted to shout at the time. You know what? The only people blowing up churches are right-wing fanatics in the United States. And
Mhm.
those churches are filled with black people. That's who's blowing up churches. On 9/11, they didn't go after they didn't care Bin Laden, Al Qaeda, the, the Vatican was never a target. It
Yeah.
was the World Trade Center. They were going after the heart of capitalism, the heart
Mhm.
of exploitation, not, yeah, the church is not irrelevant, but it is not the center that any of these people seem to think it is.
Yeah.
So they're not struggling with these issues. They're not struggling with the, we're not serving the poor, or you know, how are we gonna put these old men out to pasture? You know, they're having arguments that are only really happening in North America and in other affluent countries, you know, about gender, and that's a real thing, but they're not having it in an actual sincere way. Women will have more of a role in the church. Well, I'm sure every woman who's sitting there going, "Well, thanks for nothing, assholes." You know,
Yeah.
like, what is that? No, I can't imagine any woman coming out of that movie and going, "Wow, I feel like, I was
I feel
seen, I was
seen. Yeah.
heard."
Yeah.
No, they feel much like, and maybe this is the most, it's my favorite moment, and it's the most honest, like, I think what might actually sum up a lot of people's honest feelings about the church is that when our hero has to come to, you know, who he's just bullied, you know, earlier in the film, you know, "I need to talk to her alone. You can go now." All of a sudden, he needs her help. She's,
Yeah.
you know, it's important just the way she's like, you can feel the "fuck you" coming off of the woman. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, and that's a moment, when she calls them out. That's a great moment. That was emotionally satisfying.
When the Isabella Rossellini
Yeah,
character? Yeah.
what was I
In the
got her name right.
cafeteria
Sister
there or
Agnes. Sister Agnes,
yes, yeah.
the Cardinals' head caterer and housekeeper. When she, you know, backs him up, when she says, "No, this is what
About
happened."
Tremblay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
And the best part of that is she says it. She says, "No, Tremblay. It was
yeah,
Cardinal Tremblay that had the had the nun brought here,
yeah.
uh, and that's the truth." And then she then she curtsies
And walks off.
directly to
Yeah,
Tremblay.
yeah,
She curtsies and then
yeah.
takes off.
It's a great FU moment. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I can see why. I guess, you know, I'm not, she's barely in the movie, although,
Mhm.
Jesus, I keep talking about her, so couldn't
Well, I think her
didn't have.
presence, like, she didn't have a lot of lines, but she had a presence which was almost as heavy
Yeah,
as Cardinal Lawrence's. Like,
yeah,
she sort of there's a favorite shot of Burgers, the director, where you approach it from the back, like over the camera is over the sort of the shoulder of the person looking at the back of their head, and that's how it opens with Cardinal Lawrence walking there, and she gets the back of the head treatment as well, and not
yeah.
too many of the characters do, and so they have sort of similar kind of like weight. I think
Yeah.
story wise there. And so
Oh,
she doesn't say a lot. She isn't given a lot of lines, but she's sort of there just like watching
yeah.
everything. And she's
Or
often very still. Like she's got moments of total silence.
I have a still I pulled, and I almost used it for one of our thumbnails, Jim, where
Mhm.
she is just sitting. It's from the point, it's early in the movie. He's given his briefing to the Cardinals about how it's all going to play out. This is what we're here for. This is what we're doing. And of course,
Mhm.
she's sitting outside. She doesn't get to be in that room. She's
No.
sitting outside and she can hear it. And you just see her sitting there and you feel for her. You know,
Mhm.
I feel her. You know, you can only, when she's on the screen, when she's talking to Shinumi, when Shinumi's upset, I kind of didn't really buy the contrived confrontation in the cafeteria where they're all dining. Can't call what they're doing eating. They're dining. You know,
Mhm.
this is
Grilled cheese.
again yet another austere yet rich place. But when they're talking, even Shinumi, the close up on the hands, you feel her emotion. This
Mhm.
is when my heart breaks a little,
Yeah.
you know? And and yes, it's great that it's there, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
Don't just say, "Yeah, you know, it really sucks to be a woman in the Catholic Church." Do something. Give us something there. Give us an actual real debate, not just one old horn dog got caught exploiting his position as a man in his early 30s to a 19-year-old nun
Yeah.
in Nigeria, and, "Oh, well, I will pray," and you feel bad for him. We're supposed to feel bad for him.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, but whoa.
Well, the
Yes,
other
pray
thing is
for
that,
forgiveness, but maybe go find that woman, and maybe you both go find your son
yeah.
and make amends.
Ooh, Conclave 2.
And this is, again, there's all this stuff left on the table,
Yeah.
to give us a much lighter thing that looks implies that it's a bigger, more important thing than it is. Now, of course, the only thing here I have is, I gotta admit, when it came out, other movies are so strong, but this has Oscar winner all over it, circa, what was it, 2011, 2012, 2014? When did The King's Speech win?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's another lightweight, like, again, an emotionally satisfying film and everything, but, you're not going, wow, this was important, you know?
2010.
Yeah. We talked about it as this film that people are forgetting.
Mhm.
And this had Oscar winner, forgettable Oscar winner all over it, whereas, apparently Honora, which actually said real things, like way more real, way more apropos about economics and sex and exploitation and workers. And already some people are saying, "Oh, sex sells." You. So yeah, I gotta admit, if it's got Oscar winner all over it. I'm not saying that the Oscars have suddenly gotten smarter, but it's like, just make it a little easier to forget this film. Except when those lists of top 10 Pope films come out.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
number 2, before we get to number 1, number 2, Conclave. And now SCTV's King of the Popes.
Melonville Production Company.
Listen, Johnny LaRue, now that's a film producer.
Yes.
Him and Guy Caballero, they know showbiz.
Yeah. Dynamic duo. There we go. All right, Isabella Rossellini. I promised a quick story here.
Oh, yes.
About 20 years ago, she was filming something with Guy Madden. I think it ended up being called Green Porno, which was about sort of insects. It was experimental.
Yeah.
And
Guy
so
Madden.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. As opposed to Guy Madden's, NBC sitcom series. So they were filming in Winnipeg, and there was a day I went out. I was working downtown at the Sill Pit building for a film festival. I was coming back from lunch, very cold, like -30, as cold as Winnipeg can get. Big blue sky. When it's super sunny, it's super cold generally, or when it's super cold, it's super sunny. So I was going into the building, and this taxi pulls up, and two people get out of it, and it's kind of awkward because there's those times where I'm going to hold the door open for this person, but they're not coming for another minute, and you think, am I going to stand here for an entire minute holding the door open? It's going to look silly, what have you. And they eventually came off the curb, and and I was sort of distracted, and I looked back to who I was holding the door open for, and it was Isabella Rossellini, and she goes, "Oh, thank you very much." And I just went, "Oh," not to her. I just went, "Yeah, no problem." And then I went in up to the office.
No problem. No problem,
God,
Mrs. Rossellini.
hi, I love your mom in Casablanca. Bye. And yeah, that was kind of fun in Winnipeg, right? Downtown Winnipeg. You go downtown, you never know what you're gonna do. I met Malcolm McDowell. I introduced myself in a Starbucks on Donald, which is no longer Starbucks. But yeah, all kinds of fun here when you get the tax incentive, provincial tax incentive bonus. But
Well,
anyhow,
and you know what? That I mean, it is Guy Madden. I'm like any other Winnipegger, especially somebody who was a former member of the Winnipeg Film Group. There's this weird sort of uh, uh, you're kind of jealous at the same time, kind of impressed, and at the same time, kind of like I don't get it. Um, about him, but he has made not one, not two, but like several films with this woman.
oh yeah,
He has a respect outside of his hometown, like so many others have, right? Um,
yeah.
Jim, I just wanted to, I'm going to quickly, let me see if I can't. Oh, for crying out loud, why does it do that? For the love of God, could we just... No, it's not going to let me do that. Because of course it isn't. Oh, for Christ's sakes. Sorry, Mr. Chaboyko.
No,
I'm
no.
struggling with something here.
While you're doing that, I'm going to. Oh,
Okay, here we are. Here. This is what I'm gonna do. Whoopsie, wrong one. There we are. This is one of the many amazing stills that I
yes.
pulled off. And this is an amazing shot. And this is the not maybe frustrating is the right word. Like, it's so well made. It's so well crafted. Yeah, and it takes these moments, like, I really do. It's this beautiful glow up. The movie going public, I don't think is going to remember this movie. But Jim, I think cinematographers are going to remember it. Editors are going to remember it. Like, it is so well paced. It takes its time at the right time. The way they do the tracking shots, the way they lean into color.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And some of the shots,
it's stunning. And at times it really does give that import. Even the moment where God himself says, you know what? You will not be the Pope. When the explosion blows the blast shutter, he's the only one who falls, light coming down. God, truly, God light coming down on him, covered in dust, as light is forced into this back room. Holy metaphor.
Yeah.
Holy symbolism, Batman. You had mentioned it earlier off camera. I was like, yeah, this is the moment where we're like, yeah, he's not going to be Pope. His brief moment of ambition, or perhaps a long moment that has come to the fore, is done. He will not be. And then they have that great conflict in that theater that they go into to have yet another informal conversation. It's like a political convention,
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the shots though, like there's some, and it's almost got like a photographer's eye. Like, they're not still photos, obviously, but there's sequences almost
every
like a little
frame of painting
in between bumpers, or in between scenes. There's like these what they call bumpers. On TV is when they're about to go into a commercial, an insert, and there's these sort of montages of, I guess before lunch, the nuns setting out the dishes, and they have the three cardinals having a smoke, and they'll have some other person thinking or praying, or like just a beautifully composed image shot. When they're about to, like, the whole thing, you're in this iron dome, right? You're in this situation where they're sequestered like a jury is, can't know anything about the outside world, and they show a
Yeah,
pile of
until they break that rule at the end,
exact.
because
They have a
plot's got a
pile of
plot. Tedesco has to be a raving Islamophobe
they have a
on the
pile of
nose.
phones. There's a pile of telephones that they've just pushed to the end there
Yeah.
on the tile, and I thought that tells you exactly, that's got a whole kind of a it tells you the import of the situation. There's all the cigarette butts in the cobblestones there. They show where the people have obviously been smoking and thinking. And
They're venal sins.
yes, yeah,
Again, like this weird sort of show of purity as they're puffing away,
yeah.
you know. Jim, I think I think we're already there, but I want to put a formal kind of thing on it. Uh, let's get into final thoughts. I mean, I think I've said everything I have to say about this film. Of course, you'll say something, and then I'll be like, "Oh, wait." But so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. A couple things. The soundtrack I thought was really quite something else. And I'm noticing this more and more lately. And it started with the Japanese movie we watched in December,
Harakiri.
Harakiri, where you have the wood block, and the sort of the music is almost as violence, or music as like that throbbing sort of heartbeat you feel in your neck when you're tense, or that not as succor, but as nothing soothing, but like that just sort of basically puts your nerves on edge. And here the composer used something called a crystallophone, played using wet hands. That's straight off Wikipedia, so nothing too I didn't go too in depth with that. But then there's this sort of violin motif where they use something called the ricochet bowing technique, and it's this like when something happens. So in the scene where Lawrence is going through the dead Pope's apartment looking for
Evidence.
evidence, it's silent.
He's a gumshoe.
It's silent until the very end, and you hear a couple of those, and it just
an old dame with a heart of gold.
Yeah, and then
somebody is on.
Isabella's on the other end with the cup on the wall, trying to see if anybody's in there, and so I thought that was very effective, and boy, it sets your nerves on edge. And then there was a couple of things too. He has the whole speech in the first act about doubt versus certainty, and he's talking about these things that will eventually play a sort of a role in some of the decisions. I think he throws down a script, and even the director said this is when everyone in the room started to think, oh, this guy's not messing around. All the other characters are sort of having to regard him a little differently. And he says, certainty is the enemy of tolerance, amongst other things. And I thought that was a really nicely, he started saying the usual things, and he takes off his glasses, which you think, he goes, I'm just going to speak from the heart. And then he talks about his certainty as a sin. And I really, really like that part of it. And I sort of wonder if it played into the end there, where he's in a sort of sweet spot between certainty and doubt. Maybe that's what made him smile a little bit.
I think he went through his uncertain phase, and he's a new level of understanding. Let's say a new plateau. He saw his way through his uncertainty, because it is also a man who is struggling with a doubt of his role in the film, or a role in the church, his own ambitions, his own dreams. Maybe they're coming to an end. And all of a sudden he plays this role. He sees it through with, a little beat up, but that's life.
Yeah.
And he finally is like, and then he makes his key decision, symbolized by picking up the turtle. He's like, I'm gonna follow in the previous pope's footsteps and cover for this guy. Although he's not really asking to be covered for. Benitez is an innocent.
Yeah.
He is innocent, uh, in a court sense. And so at the end, he gets a bit of comfort
Yeah.
from seeing through his uncertainty, working through it, working under uncertainty, as
Mhm.
we all do. Um, Jim, let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
I said it in the title. Um, you heard my opinion. It hasn't changed. Is this very good or is it great?
Yeah, I think it's I think you made a good argument. I think it's very good. Um and I think it would bear, maybe not, later this year, but a few years down the road, it might bear another viewing. I think it's worth a couple watches, perhaps. As I told you before the show, I just rewatched the first hour of it
Yeah.
earlier this evening, and there's sort of a few things I missed, and and I'm glad I did. It's a super watchable movie, and you get a couple things. You get to a place that you don't normally get. That's sort of what you wish
Yeah.
of movies, right? You get inside this secret place, and then you see all the accoutrements of
And
it.
how it
That
works, the
how it works.
mechanics of it. Yeah.
And even in the first few minutes, when they have to rip the ring off the dead Pope's hand,
Yeah.
and they immediately take his seal off it. And there's tools specifically for that.
Yeah.
And there's a little thing that you slide the ring on, and they show it again later. And so these are like all the little parts and moving parts and the wax seals and everything. Completely fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a couple things you want from movies.
And
Take me to a place I haven't been before.
yeah. And you're absolutely right. Like it is, and this is the thing, is it is great movie making.
Mhm.
It is not a great movie, but it is very good. I've already talked about the politics that, are terrible, but at least not offensive. The more, well, they're
Lacking.
let's say that there are blinders,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and that could literally have been right from Robert Harris himself,
Yeah.
all the way through. They're like, well, isn't this what people are worried about? It's petty bourgeois, or
Yeah.
even bourgeois. Like heck, end of the World War II, the militarist pro-war anti-peace faction of Hirohito's cabinet was still, no, we can win. So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, great filmmaking. And I too could see myself watching this again if it came up in the feed and kind of go, I got a couple hours to kill.
Yeah.
Because it has those moments that I've raved about. It's so beautiful, but I suspect by the end of it, I'll go, wow, this is even lighter fare than I originally thought. Sometimes where you eat some cereal because you want to eat, and then you're like, I am not satisfied.
Yeah.
This was not the snack. This was not the snack I was looking for.
These sugar puffs, they're not that hard. They don't have that much mass.
All right. Well, listen, folks. Of course, you know what? We've had our Oscars high. Now we're going to go into the post-Oscars crash. Thank you all very much for coming. I do have one more thing I want to tease everyone. Jim and I did go see a couple days ago Captain America: Brave New World. We will be publishing a See It or Skip It review of that, but that will be on the same day that Jim and I are actually going to do a deep dive on MCU. As American cultural propaganda, let's say. Of course, we'll be looking at it from a more nuanced lens than, oh, it's propaganda. But I think this is our time. that movie, it's just the perfect time to talk about the politics of the MCU, the politics of Disney in general as this American cultural behemoth, and the weaknesses we see in the film that I think speak to our time. And the arc of the MCU and what it's selling and the struggles it's having, not just with people outside of the country, outside of the United States, like Jim and I in Canada, critiquing it from, let's say, outside of United States bubble, left-wing bubble, certainly a left-wing bubble for me, to right-wingers who, demented grifters that they are, going, "Hey, it's all woke and I feel small in the pants now." Whiners. Anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a chick in this movie.
And she keeps talking. And insisting I listen. Why am I single? Can't put those together, idiot.
Poking the bear.
So on that note, please like, subscribe, ringy-ding that bell, and thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Now, if I could just find
R.I.P. Gene Hackman.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jim. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.